She stood on the curb as the taxi sped away, leaving her in the slush and shame. He saw her face and decided she wasn't worth the fare. What he didn't know was that she'd remember his license plate, and tomorrow she'd own his job. The yellow cab's brakes hissed against the Chicago morning as Aisha Mitchell stepped forward, her bright coat cutting through the February gloom like a beacon of hope she desperately needed to feel. The presentation folders clutched against her chest contained 3 years of research, market analysis, and dreams distilled into a business plan that could change everything. Healthy food delivery to underserved neighborhoods. A simple idea that could save lives and build an empire. The driver's window rolled down halfway, revealing weathered hands and suspicious eyes beneath a faded baseball cap. She could see his face clearly now, the deep lines etched by years of city driving, the way his mouth tightened when he saw her approach. "I called for a pickup to downtown," she said, reaching for the door handle. "Canceled." The word hit the air like a slap. "Find another cab." The window shot up with mechanical finality, leaving her reflection staring back from tinted glass. The taxi lurched forward, splashing dirty snow across her yellow coat, and disappeared into the stream of morning traffic. Aisha stood frozen, not from the cold, but from the familiar burn of humiliation spreading through her chest. Around her, the city continued its relentless march, commuters streaming past like she was invisible, like what just happened was perfectly normal. A businessman in an expensive suit flagged down the next taxi that appeared. The same driver who'd refused her pulled over immediately. Her phone buzzed. The investor meeting she'd spent months arranging, the presentation that could launch her company, the dream she'd built from nothing was slipping away minute by minute. But as she watched that taxi disappear around the corner, something crystallized inside her, sharp and unforgiving as the winter wind. She memorized the license plate number before it vanished completely. 3 days later, Aisha sat in her studio apartment surrounded by printouts, financial statements, and the glowing screen of her laptop. The Chicago Tribune's business section lay open beside her coffee cup, the headline reading, "Local Taxi Company Faces Bankruptcy." Below it, a smaller story detailed the mounting debts, aging fleet, and pending lawsuits of Midwest Cab Company, the same company whose yellow car had left her standing in the slush. She'd missed the investor meeting, but something else had taken its place, a different kind of hunger, more focused and infinitely more dangerous. The company's financial records painted a picture of systematic failure, outdated dispatch systems, complaints of discriminatory practices buried in city bureaucracy, a fleet of vehicles held together by prayer and duct tape. The owner, she learned, was desperate enough to consider any reasonable offer. Aisha opened her laptop and began typing. By dawn, she'd drafted a preliminary acquisition proposal using every dollar of her savings, every favor from former colleagues, and every connection she'd built during her years in business consulting. The risk was insane. The opportunity was perfect. Her fingers hovered over the send button. One click would commit her to a path she'd never imagined, gambling everything on a company she'd never seen from the inside, driven by a moment of rage and humiliation that still burned in her chest. She clicked send. The warehouse smelled of motor oil and morning coffee when Aisha walked through the main entrance 4 weeks later. Mechanics in coveralls looked up from their work, tools suspended in mid-air as they tried to process the sight of a young black woman in a tailored suit walking through their domain like she owned it. Because she did. The paperwork had taken 3 weeks to finalize. Her lawyers had worked around the clock to structure the deal, combining her personal savings with a business loan secured against future revenue projections and the promise of federal grants for minority-owned businesses in underserved markets. The former owner had signed everything without question, too grateful for the financial lifeline to ask many questions about his mysterious buyer. Now, standing in the middle of the garage that represented her new empire, Aisha felt the weight of every decision that had brought her here. The familiar faces of drivers clustered around coffee machines and dispatch boards, completely unaware that their world had just changed forever. "Ma'am, can I help you?" A supervisor approached, clipboard in hand and confusion written across his features. "Are you looking for someone?" "I'm looking for everyone," she replied, her voice carrying across the garage floor with quiet authority. "I need all drivers and staff in the main bay in 10 minutes. Full company meeting." "I'm sorry, but who are you exactly?" Aisha smiled, the same smile she'd perfected in a dozen boardrooms where men had questioned her right to be there. "I'm the new owner, and we have a lot to discuss." The next hour blurred past in a whirlwind of phone calls, introductions, and the gradual dawning recognition on faces throughout the building. The mechanics who'd stared now approached with tentative respect. The dispatchers who'd initially dismissed her quickly realized she knew more about their operational inefficiencies than they'd expected. But through it all, she was searching faces, waiting for one particular moment. She found him by the coffee machine, the same weathered hands now wrapped around a styrofoam cup, the same baseball cap pushed back on graying hair. He was talking to another driver about overtime schedules when their eyes met across the garage floor. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. The cup slipped from his fingers, hot coffee splashing across concrete. His face went pale, then flushed red as the implications crashed over him. Aisha walked toward him with measured steps, her heels clicking against the garage floor like a countdown timer. The conversation around them gradually died as other drivers sensed the tension building in the air. "Mr. Patterson," she said, reading from the personnel file she'd memorized, 23 years of service, clean driving record, no major incidents on file." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Do you remember me?" she asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with 4 weeks of planning, risk, and the memory of standing in dirty snow while his taillights disappeared into traffic. Yes, he whispered. "Good. Because I remember you too." The main bay fell silent as word spread that something significant was happening. Drivers emerged from dispatch offices and break rooms, forming a loose circle around the confrontation that everyone could feel building, but no one quite understood. Aisha raised her voice so everyone could hear. "4 weeks ago, this man looked at my face and decided I wasn't worth a taxi fare, not because of my destination, not because of safety concerns, because of the color of my skin." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some drivers shifted uncomfortably, others stared at Patterson with new understanding. "Today, I own this company. Every cab, every route, every paycheck that keeps your families fed comes through me." Patterson's face crumpled. "Please, I need this job. I got kids, a mortgage." "So do a lot of people you've probably refused to pick up over the years," Aisha replied, her voice steady but not cruel. "So do the people in neighborhoods you've marked as no-go zones on your personal route maps." She paused, looking around at the faces watching her. Some suspicious, some curious, all waiting to see what kind of owner they'd be working for. "But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to build something better." She pulled out a folder thick with business plans and policy changes. "Starting Monday, every driver goes through sensitivity training. Every cab gets updated with GPS tracking and customer service monitoring. Every neighborhood in this city gets equal service, period." The crowd stirred, some nodding approval, others looking uncertain about the changes ahead. "Mr. Patterson," she said, turning back to the man who'd started it all. "You have a choice. You can be part of the solution, or you can find another company that still tolerates discrimination. But if you stay, you follow the new rules. Everyone gets picked up. Everyone gets treated with respect. No exceptions." Patterson looked up at her, his eyes wet with shame and fear. "I'm sorry. I know that don't mean much, but I am. I was wrong." "Words are a start," Aisha said. "Actions matter more. Show me you've changed and you keep your job. Show me you haven't and you're gone." She turned to address the entire group, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd just risked everything to prove a point. "This company almost died because it served some people and ignored others. That changes now. We're going to be the cab company that goes everywhere, serves everyone, and treats every customer like they matter, because they do." As the meeting broke up and drivers returned to their routes, Patterson approached her one final time. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why give me a chance after what I did?" Aisha considered the question, thinking about the moment on the curb that had changed both their lives in ways neither could have predicted. "Because the world has enough punishment in it," she said finally. "What it needs more of is people willing to do better when they get the chance." 6 months later, Midwest Cab Company had the highest customer satisfaction ratings in Chicago. The healthy food delivery service Aisha had originally planned became a subsidiary operation, using the cab infrastructure to serve neighborhoods that had been ignored for decades. The company she'd bought in anger had become the foundation for everything she'd dreamed of building. And Patterson? He'd become one of her most reliable drivers, the sensitivity training having awakened something in him that had been buried under years of casual prejudice. He never forgot the day his new boss had bought his company just to teach him a lesson about treating people right. But Aisha's favorite moment came every morning when she walked through the garage and saw drivers of every background working together, serving a city that finally had a cab company that served everyone equally. The yellow coat she'd worn that February morning now hung in her office, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to injustice isn't anger. Sometimes it's ownership.